There is something feeding on your anger right now. Not metaphorically. Something is drawing energy from the frustration you felt this morning when you opened your phone and saw a headline designed to make your blood pressure spike. Something took a cut of the guilt you carried into work. Something profited from the argument you replayed in your head for the third time on the drive home. And the worst part is not that it happened. The worst part is that you had no idea it was happening at all. You have felt this before without being able to name it. That strange exhaustion after scrolling through a comment section you never intended to read. The heaviness after a political argument that changed no one's mind. The slow drain of working inside a system that does not care whether you sleep, whether your weekends feel like yours. You felt the cost. You just never saw where the energy went. What if there is a framework that explains exactly where it goes? Not vaguely, not spiritually, precisely. A framework that names the invisible structures feeding on your attention, your reactions, your loyalty, and your fear. And more importantly, one that shows you how to stop feeding them without burning your life to the ground. This is the idea of pendulums. And once you see it, you will never look at the systems around you the same way again. A pendulum is any structure created when large numbers of people begin to think and feel in the same direction. A corporation is a pendulum. A political party is a pendulum. A religion, an ideology, a social media platform, a cultural movement, a family expectation that has been repeated so many times it feels like law. All pendulums, and here's the critical thing, once a pendulum forms, it stops serving the people who created it and starts serving itself. That is not a metaphor. That is the mechanic. When enough human energy flows into a single structure, that structure begins to behave as though it has its own survival instinct. It does not care about your happiness. It does not care about your health. It cares about one thing: continuing to exist. And to exist, it needs fuel. Your emotional energy is that fuel. Think about what happens when you get pulled into a political argument online. You did not plan to spend 40 minutes typing furious replies to a stranger you will never meet. But something grabbed your attention, triggered your identity, and kept you reacting long after the conversation stopped being useful. You walked away drained. The argument walked away fed. That is a pendulum doing exactly what it was built to do. Not by anyone in particular. Not by some shadowy figure pulling strings. By the structure itself. The algorithm did not care which side you were on. It cared that you stayed engaged. Your emotional intensity was the product, and you gave it away for free. Now here is where it gets uncomfortable. Pendulums do not only feed on negative energy, they feed on positive energy too. The football club you adore, the brand you defend online, the celebrity whose reputation you protect as though it were your responsibility. These are also pendulums, harvesting your devotion with the same efficiency as the things that make you angry. Picture a stadium, 60,000 people. A player makes a catastrophic mistake. Rage rises from every seat. 60,000 nervous systems fire at once. The player is crushed. The fans leave drained, irritable for the rest of the evening. But the pendulum, the club, the spectacle, the machine, absorbed every drop. It fed. And next week, those same 60,000 people come back to feed it again. You would like to think that is just passion, just caring about something. But ask yourself a harder question. Who benefits from your emotional investment and who pays the cost? Because the answer is almost never the same person. This is how pendulums work. They create a frequency, a wavelength of thought and emotion, and pull people onto it. Once you are on that frequency, your energy flows upward into the structure. You feel it as passion, loyalty, anger, obligation, guilt, or excitement. The pendulum feels it as fuel, but it can't just wait for you to arrive. It has to capture you. And this is where pendulums become genuinely sophisticated. The first method is the simplest. They divide the world into us and them. We are right. They are wrong. We are good. They are dangerous. The moment you accept that frame, you are inside the pendulum. Your identity is linked to its survival. The second method is guilt. A pendulum will make you feel that leaving is betrayal, that questioning is disloyalty, that wanting something different makes you selfish, ungrateful, or broken. Think about the family expectation you never challenged, the career path you followed because stepping off it felt like failure. That guilt was not yours. It was the pendulum's leash. The third method is disguising exploitation as virtue. The company does not say it is extracting your life force. It says you are part of a family. The political movement does not say it needs your outrage. It says you have a moral duty. The platform does not say it is farming your attention. It says it is connecting you. Every pendulum wraps its hunger in the language of belonging and purpose, and that is what makes them so hard to see. Now add this. Pendulums do not just capture individuals. They set their captured groups against other pendulums. One pendulum pokes another, provokes it, insults it, threatens it, then tells its own followers, look how dangerous they are. Both sides pour energy into the battle, believing they are defending something real, while the structures above them grow fat on the chaos. Think of it like a beehive. Someone walks up and jabs it with a stick. The bees swarm. Then the person with the stick turns to the crowd and says, see? These bees are a threat. We need to destroy them. That is the structural logic behind every pendulum war. The people who fight gain nothing. The pendulum that provoked the fight gains everything. And here is the part people miss. You do not have to be a zealot to be captured. You do not have to be naive or uneducated. You just have to care. One emotional reaction, one moment of identification, one flicker of this matters to me, and the pendulum has a thread attached to your nervous system. You might think you see through the manipulation, that your values are independently chosen and your loyalties belong to you. But the fact that you feel strongly about that belief is worth examining. Because a pendulum does not need you to be blind. It needs you to be invested. And investment feels exactly like free will when you are inside it. This is what separates pendulums from ordinary manipulation. You do not feel coerced. You feel convinced. You do not feel captured. You feel committed. The pendulum has not taken your freedom. It has rerouted it so that every choice you make still serves the structure. So what do? Because the obvious answer, fight the pendulum, expose it, tear it down, is the exact wrong move. A pendulum feeds on energy. Any energy. The person who hates a political party with passion is feeding it just as effectively as the person who loves it. The activist fighting a corporation around the clock is keeping its pendulum alive in their own mind. The ex you cannot stop thinking about. The boss you fantasize about telling off. You are not weakening those structures. You are powering them. This is why outrage culture is the most efficient pendulum engine ever built. It does not matter whether you are outraged for the cause or against it. The machine eats both. The algorithm does not distinguish between love and hate. It distinguishes between engagement and silence. And silence is the only thing a pendulum cannot digest. So the first method of escape is letting the pendulum fall through you. You do not fight it. You do not resist it. You do not argue with it. You simply stop giving it your emotional energy. The provocation comes and you let it pass. The guilt arrives and you do not pick it up. The outrage bait lands in your feed and you scroll past without the internal flinch that says someone needs to say something about this. That does not mean you stop caring. It means you become ruthlessly selective about what earns your emotional response. Because most of the things you react to in a day did not deserve that reaction. They were not your battles. They were pendulums ringing a bell, and you answered out of habit. The second method is more subtle. You extinguish the pendulum by responding with energy opposite to what it expects. A pendulum that feeds on fear cannot process calm. One that feeds on outrage cannot process indifference. One that feeds on guilt cannot process someone who simply says no and feels nothing about it. You short-circuit the structure. You become invisible to it. Think about the last time someone tried to draw you into a fight and you genuinely did not care. Not pretending. Genuinely unbothered. They escalated. They pushed harder. And when your energy still did not match what they needed, they moved on. That was a pendulum losing its grip. The third method is the most practical and perhaps the most liberating. You rent yourself out. You show up to the job, attend the event, engage with the system. But you withhold the one thing the pendulum actually wants. Your emotional core. Your hands are in the game. Your mind does the work. But your energy stays with you. This is not cynicism. This is strategic detachment. You can work inside a corporation without letting it define who you are. You can engage with a platform without letting its algorithm hijack your mood. You can be part of a family system without letting its unspoken rules crush your identity. You participate at the level of action. You withdraw at the level of energy, and then you start noticing something in the people around you. You see them defend things that actively hurt them, attack enemies they have never met, pour energy into structures that give nothing back. And you recognize the pattern because you used to be inside it too. You see it in yourself. The subscription you keep paying out of guilt. The news cycle you keep watching even though it ruins your evening. The argument you keep having inside your head with someone who has no idea the conversation exists. These are not choices. These are pendulums pulling on threads you forgot were attached. The most dangerous pendulum is not the one that makes you angry. It is the one that makes you feel like your identity depends on it. Because once a pendulum is woven into who you believe you are, walking away feels like walking away from yourself. And that is by design. That is the highest level of capture. When the prison feels like home, think about someone who has built their entire personality around a single cause, a single belief system. They cannot hear criticism of it without feeling personally attacked. They have merged with the pendulum so completely that the structure's interests and their own feel identical. They will tell you they are free, but they are speaking in the pendulum's voice. So where in your life are you doing the same thing? What structure have you merged with so deeply that you no longer know where it ends and you begin? What would you defend with irrational intensity if someone questioned it? That heat, that spike, that flash of how dare you, that is the thread. That is the pendulum pulling. You do not have to leave every system. You do not have to quit your job, delete every app, and live on a mountain. Overcorrection is just another pendulum. The pendulum of superiority. The pendulum of I see through everything and everyone else is asleep. That stance feeds its own structure too. The goal is not escape. The goal is awareness. To feel the pull and recognize it for what it is before your energy leaves your body and enters a structure that will never return it. To choose what earns your emotional fuel the way you choose what earns your money. Carefully, deliberately, and with full knowledge of the cost, because here is the truth most people never reach. The energy you waste on pendulums that do not serve you is the exact same energy you need to build the life you actually want. There is not an infinite supply. Every reaction you hand to a system that does not care about you is a reaction you did not give to something that matters. Every hour lost inside a mental argument with a pendulum is an hour you did not spend moving toward the things that would make your life feel like yours. The pendulum does not want you to realize this. It wants you busy, engaged, so wrapped up in its frequency that you never step back far enough to ask the one question that would change everything. Is this actually mine? Is this battle mine? Is this anger mine? Is this guilt mine? Or did something else put it here and convince me it was always part of who I am? That question is the beginning, not the answer. The question. Because the moment you ask it honestly, the pendulum loses its grip. Not because you have defeated it, but because you have seen it. And a pendulum cannot operate on someone who sees it clearly. It needs your unconscious participation. It needs you on autopilot. It needs you feeding it without noticing the cost. Now you know what a pendulum is. You know how it captures you. You know how it feeds. You know the 3 ways to break free. And you know that fighting only makes it stronger. So the next time you feel that pull, the tightening in your chest, the surge of righteousness, the compulsion to react, defend, engage, prove, pause. Just for a moment. And ask yourself one question. Is this mine? Or is something feeding right now? You cannot destroy a pendulum by fighting it. You can only starve it. And the way you starve it is terrifyingly simple. You stop caring about the things that were never yours to carry. That is not indifference. That is precision. That is taking your energy back from every structure that learned to feed on you without your permission. And it is the most dangerous thing you can do to a system that needs you asleep. You wake up, you see the thread, and you let it go. If this hit something real, subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what pendulum have you been feeding without knowing it? What have you been carrying that was never actually yours? Because once you start noticing these things, you do not stop at one.